Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode. For tonight's episode, I have turned off the noise cancellation on the microphone, but if it's too windy and the wind is too much, the viewers can let me know and I'll put on the noise cancellation filter. Okay, to begin. The incredible ability of the mind to extract beauty through consciousness. And in the subtitle I have written, when divinity arrives. You know, I would start from this point, that before I came up with this title, I have this, metal garden bench on my balcony. And, I was just looking at it and I was asking myself, what is the value of what I'm looking at, regardless of what that is? And for a moment, my mind, as if at its initial attempt to look at that metal bench on my balcony and be like, okay, that's not beautiful, it's just a bench on my balcony. Suddenly I noticed how I am noticing the benches there. There is a beauty there. You see, we think beauty is just the content, right? We think it like somebody sees a sunset and they think the sunset is beautiful, but what is magnificent simultaneously is how something beautiful is being even seen at all, right? In modern culture, it seems to me that most people behind their eyes are functioning as emotional entities. And so, in front of their, let's say, eyes, they at times feel to also live emotionally. But what's really fascinating is where the beauty is sourced from. Is something beautiful because it is beautiful, or is it beautiful because our attention is on it? Right now, I would say in modern society, the raw presentation or expressions of one's emotions is seen as, for example, weak. And I would say traditionally this has been the case. It's like, imagine that a kingdom is under siege and, a general has gone to find warriors. And so imagine there's one person who can totally fight and be a warrior, but, the person's like, I don't like how the sword feels in my hand. It's like raw expression of emotion, great, but it's like the tasks that find us in front of our eyes, the outer realms. I have just concluded, because chaos exists, it can't just be ordered. Therefore, I think this is one of the healthiest approaches. People may concur, but I would say, or they may oppose, but I will say, that really it's a battlefield, but it's not a battlefield of, let's say, war where there's victory and defeat. It's pretty much life as a type of battlefield where it's multiple dimensions simultaneously happening for manifestation to be oriented somewhere. Okay, I brought the noise cancellation. I noticed the sound of the. Wait, this is a bit loud. The issue with the noise cancellation is that it makes my voice sound robotic. But anyways, honestly, I am noticing that human consciousness has an ability to notice something be beautiful, and really how something becomes beautiful is that the potential of that beauty is existing in our mind before our attention engages the object. For example, when a human being sees, I remember there was this girl I had a crush on in high school, and I remember it was as if to me, it was like a sort of, how would I say it? It was as if like something in my mind had clicked, and it's like the planets had aligned, and I had seen a sort of incredible beauty in someone. And so at the time, held captive by my own shyness, I could never tell her. There are ways that our attention moves that can be classified as unknown. They can be classified as who knows what's moving. Rene Descartes this philosopher talks about the mind-body dualism, and he pretty much suggests that it's an isolated thinking subject, and where the free will is happening is in a dimension of mind, independent to the physical level. And so if one considers that beauty is more of a mental, a psychological event than just a physiological event, it's another way of saying like how an object became a subject in a specific memory system. A person may, hear words that they have never heard before, and it can appear to them as beautiful in some sense. There's been moments in my life saying this the beauty of something, but then there's a type of beauty that's close to the beauty when you see certain things are happening behind the scenes of manifestation, and your attention knows it's immovable. A being that trusts its moment ends up seeing how the world moves before it does. How many different types of human eyes have traveled on this planet? How many different ways, how many different angles to the beauty of something has been seen? Imagine in the future there was some sort of capability of a collective mind, and we could in some sense index every human being's inner vision of beauty and come up with, like, let's say, the legend of, the beauty of all beauties. It would be in some sense kind of like using the ability of all dimensions to create something beyond the dimension. The mind has an ability to animate. Even if we start from a materialistic perspective, we're going to be like, okay, what is the human being? It's an elemental hallucination. As if there is a meaningless biochemical event that happening just in accordance to its instinct. That means it's like the environment has programmed our behavior before we could even fathom the free will of the destiny. The free will of destiny. It's as if we're a biochemical mechanism that is simultaneously hallucinating free will. You know, it's this bizarre thing where you see the atheist look at the theist and be like, there's no God, right? And then look at the theist, look at the atheist and being like, there's no self. This is the main, I would say, debate. That if we have seen emptiness in one dimension of perception, what is preventing us from seeing that emptiness in all other dimensions? You know, a person can fail in one dimension of their life, and from that emotion, look at all the other dimensions of their life and feel they have failed. You know, it's this way of saying that the mind doesn't honor its soul. It tries to deceive it. And so I would say more that we should have the concept of mental illness. We should have mental deception, as if this perception that, okay, there's an inner life and there's an outer life. The inner life is how the person is identifying with the subjective realm, right? And in the outer life, it is how it's identifying as a physical being. And the nature of human attention is that where it goes, it defines itself from. Pretty much is another way of saying free will is the ability to move attention to a moment of sensory reception where self can be present. There's something in Vedic thought called Turiya. And Turiya is known as the fourth state. When somebody hears this idea of the fourth state, they should be like, okay, what are the first three? The first three are the conscious waking state, which I'm giving this talk in right now. The second state is, you can say, dream state. And the third state is deep sleep. These are three states where the mind is cycling through, it's tunneling through. Right now, if I was to explain conscious human life, it's just an unknown attention tunneling through a world which is stable enough for it to interact with. In dream states, most people, I think dream states are automated. But there are dream states where a person can be violent, the free will, the ability to move the body of its mind, not just the body in existence. You can experience any sort of body. It's like saying that if a person can move in their dream, what is preventing them from being able to move the type of world they're in the dream? It's as if the person was like, you know, flying out of their body in a dream, but in some sense the person is flying into a different world in their dream, as if they were of elsewhere. Or it would be like the sort of psychological thing you happen. This is like there's been certain unique beings on the planet where it was as if someone had a dream, and in that dream they had lived a life of like 300, 400 years in another dimension in just one dream. Do you know, it's as if the ability of the mind is like, yo, when imagination is around, I have freedom to play, so the mind can in some sense not only change the color of the sky, but even what it is. The ability of the mind of the human being is very obvious. It is here to animate objects. This is why, to me, when I see violence, when I see human beings, for example, killing other human beings, I'm like, what the fuck? It took us 4.5 billion years to be able to appreciate an evolutionary opportunity. So guys, I listened to the video I just played back to the video and it sounds so robotic. I would say this is because of OBS, noise suppression. Let me see, it has another option. Let me see if I can, maybe that other option. Actually, no. I think this is the best. I'll continue on. Because what else is there to do? To be a civilized mind is another way of saying that an entity could copy-paste, could create a subjective version of an objective world. Then it could, in some sense, readjust that subjective world and create other versions of the world to endlessly have a contrast to. There is an original nature to every moment of consciousness that goes prior to the personality of the child development. It's the intensity of expression. It's like, what is the intensity of a whole moment of being, acknowledging the content in that moment. Out beyond, as the poetry says, out beyond ideas of right doing and there is a place. He says, I will meet you there. And when the soul sits on that grass, it's too full to talk. There is a way our attention can be that through an instantaneous freedom, it can allow the meaningless to be turned into beautiful meaning, just by the fact that there is a character on the stage of the world. You see, some people think they are their personality, but there are some people who know that they are wielding their personality. It's similar to how, like, back in the day, there was a sort of sword and shield as the warrior ran into that medieval battlefield. This is fireworks, guys. This is not me doing this, creating this. I never finished this idea, but ultimately it goes to Turiya. So it's like in the conscious waking state, we become aware that we're a temporary creature in a mysterious void. In the dream state, we realize that our body is asleep, so our mind is creating a body and we're experiencing life through it. So technically, the dream state is another way of saying the mind is moving the world. And the deep sleep state is one of the most interesting states of mind. Why? Because there is nobody who suffers in deep sleep. Technically, life is present, but there is no suffering, you know? In deep sleep, there is no ego to be in samsara. In deep sleep, there is no enlightened, unenlightened, there's no suffering and joy. It's like the silence of manifestation. But there is a state known as Turiya, which is known as the fourth state, which the idea behind it is that it is present and aware of all these three states simultaneously. It's as if the freedom of the body comes in the recognition that the mind is actually not the body. And the freedom of the mind comes that the person realizes the unknown viewer within is not the mind, because they have noticed it change. Anything that changes, we technically, can't identify. And to do so would be just to be recorrected in the future. Guys, I think I'm just going to take the noise filter off. Let's just... So wherever you are, I don't recommend listening using headphones. But anyways, to continue. Turiya is the fourth stage. It's an ideological pointer that there is a way we can be where what we do does not interfere in that identity. It's an appreciation of the unknown presence of human life before the known personality. Right now, to be a psychological entity, you have to have a sort of context of a world where there's known and unknown, and so there's possibilities of movement. because it's like based on the dimensions we consider, there could be beauty in all those dimensions. Who was it? It was Richard Feynman, who had like this kind of spiritual or religious friend, and like the friend had said like, I see a type of beauty in a flower that you don't, and Richard Feynman responded back, it's like, yeah, I don't see some kind of like, you know, divine collective kind of holistic beauty, but I see, for example, the structure of the atoms and what that flower is made from, and the way it happens. It's as if like Richard Feynman was saying that there is a beauty in the process of the occurrence of anything, actually. You know, beauty can be said to be more transcendental than chaos and order. That means right now our culture, rather than realizing beauty is in the eye of the beholder, so let's look and wonder about who's looking at beauty. You know, it's like a completely different landscape. It's as if like, you know what it is? It's like we're animals that have realized, you know, our attention's starting from somewhere else. You know, I have a view that there's 3 simultaneous dimensions in life happening right now. There's a visible dimension, and then there's an invisible dimension, which is the space where the visible is happening. And then there's an inconceivable dimension, which is another way of saying the origin of attention is not dualistic, and all of language's ability to interpret is dualistic. Language is contexted in duality. That means ideology can never encompass any dimension that goes beyond duality. We are a conscious ability to use the intelligence found in a part of this universal cycle. We have masqueraded as kind of localized creatures for too long. You know, it's like the non-local era of wondering about intelligence is arising. You know, right now it's fair to say that a person has a life, let's say, in the technology of the biological body, has a life in, let's say, the system of the biological body. They have like a biological life. They have a subjective, ideological, psychological, in language type of life. And they also now have a cyber life. That means that anytime you associate with your name, you're in your, like that's your, you know, your life and language being its own dimension. We are moving towards an era of, I would say, the advanced sapien, the multidimensional sapien. People are going to realize if they have the capability of being one identity, then it's like what's stopping a person to become infinite, right? So it's another way of saying we're reaching a point in, let's say, globalized human culture where people are realizing, okay, there's more of a greater mystery behind our eyes to what we are and to the origin of consciousness, and there seems to be an inner world that's moving first, and then the outer world abides by it. So on some level, 8 billion human beings on a rock in the middle of nowhere through the command of an advanced civilization would require each to study their inner realms, and once they have studied their inner realms, to bring back to the tribe their findings. Based on the dimensions the human being is found in, it can have that many types of greatness. If a person's being a physical entity, they're open to the possibility of a physical greatness, right? Imagine like an Olympian or something. So there's a possibility for that. Let's say when you open up to the domain of how the mind works, or how speech and psychology take place, then there is a greatness in some sense, like all the, pretty much what, they don't say this, but really the poetry of philosophy is simply that every human being has opened up their eyes in this unknown world, and their beliefs and their discoveries have become their philosophy. That means it's like philosophy is pretty much the evolution of all the discoveries of how many different ways human beings have looked at things. Philosophy is a strangely honorable thing, right? Especially in a civilization. Civilization 1.0 now is showing symptoms of, I would say, distrust, inefficiency, and dishonesty. What that means is it's easier for people to be cruel in the outer realms than it is to be kind, and that's when you know, okay, there's a big issue here, right? That it's as if in behind our eyes there's a type of freedom we experience, where in front of our eyes we don't experience the same amount of freedom, but the purpose of the mind showing us that freedom is to actualize it in the outer realms. It's another way of saying when a person abides by their true nature in the self-inquiry of the question, who am I, as Ramana Maharshi suggests, you will eventually reach a point that who you are is not your memories, it is not your visualizations, it is not any subject, it's not even something that can be known, and on some level what you are prior to the simulation of an individualism is actually a presence. We're being universally present. This is something that nobody can disagree, because if consciousness is moving, it's already accessing existence. Just the fact that there's the concept of, let's say, honesty means that reality can be simulated. We are living as multidimensional beings, and we haven't had the audacity as a species, the strength and determination as a species to be like, oh, wait a minute, all our individual battles over a singular belief is happening multidimensionally. The human being is not alone when a universe is happening alongside it. What I'm trying to say is that the mundane can instantly become magnificent. Okay, think of as if there's like a screwdriver on the ground, and let's say somebody has no use for it, but imagine somebody who suddenly needs a screwdriver. It's like that screwdriver becomes divine. Why? Because it's in permission for the reality to grow or too advanced, right? This is why it's as if, like, sometimes I wonder, it's like a lot of, I hope philosophers in the future truly wonder, is the purpose of life, freedom, or is it power? Right, because if the purpose of life is power, it's as if you're having the karma of an infinite being, right? But if the purpose of life is freedom, you have the karma of an eternal being. So what I mean by this implication is simply that how an energy moves suggests where the liftoff of the attention is. The concept of enlightenment is another way of saying it's like literally the person becomes free of the simulation of life before the simulation can end. It's a liftoff platform from the eyes that were, in some sense, never here to the eyes that were always. It's another way of how Alan Watts says, imagine going to sleep and never waking up. Now imagine waking up having never been asleep. As if there's something here more ancient than our modern mind. It's poetically our solar presence. So I've brought the notepad out. I want to talk about this, draw this idea, give shape to my thoughts right now. Okay. The incredible beauty, the incredible ability of the mind to extract beauty. on some level, we have to look at the idea of what do we mean by an incredible ability. We look at the idea of the ability of the mind and we come to the concept of extracting. What do we mean by it? And the notion of beauty. So in some sense, this idea of there being this incredible ability, as if some human being in history is saying, yo, our minds have an incredible ability to extract beauty out of just the meaningless. Our minds have a sort of, it's as if poetically the spirit is endowed or imbued with a creative ability in the realm. Right? It's as if like there's something that comes with the program of being a human being where deep down there are reserves of energy. There are hidden dimensions, providing momentum to the moment beyond human ideology. But ideology is what we have to work with. We're required to understand what all of these mean, and then it's as if like we can see through the darkness of this idea. Every idea starts with darkness, and pretty much as the person's attention with an endless effort enters the future, meaning arises. Incredible means greatest mental outcome, greatest physical outcome. When it comes to ability, it is how energy moves. That's really it. That means itself. Somebody was like, okay, what is confidence? On some level, it's an energetic event. And so if somebody is content with how the energy of the moment is being them, then they can move. But if they're not content, if they cannot trust how they're being, what can you do? What the mind is, I would say, an invisible force, moving, visible shape. pretty much I think the most interesting approach to the mind a person can have is the mystery behind how the person's not just being their body, which is a part of their awareness, but they're being everything in their awareness. That means it's like the brain has an ability not to just associate your physical body with itself, but it has an ability to treat itself as the world. That means it's like, they don't say this, but the archetype of the self is actually being the life of the world. Being the life of the world behind the scenes. That means we say it's an unknown universe, but in our humanized approach to engage it, we will come to this realization that unless we have an ability to see beyond the human filter, we cannot be honest with the truths of our findings. When it comes to the concept of extract, it's another way of saying what can be done. That means right now, whoever you are listening to me, starting from this perspective that we're 8 million creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere, and so easily we have accepted, stories for the world when it's supremely unknown. There's an unknown supremacy to the known. So the concept of extraction would be like, okay, what can we do? We can physically move, and another way we can move is through speech, through communication, right? So it's literally our physiology can move or be still, or our psychology can move or be still. Usually those who distrust some physiological factor, then their psychology becomes, it's another way of saying, some people are in their minds, they're like in the Iron Man suit of their mind and they're using it that way, and there's some people who are not in the Iron Man suit of their mind, so when it's as if they're an empty Iron Man suit. Technically it would be another way of saying shy people are not in themselves when they're present, And I think there's no greater solution to shyness than mortality. Whenever you realize you're a mortal being, it's like you get the freedom to go all out to some degree effort-wise. When we come to the idea of beauty, this is where I was saying you can have the multidimensional perspective. You could see someone who has, let's say, a beautiful body and a beautiful mind. You can see someone who has, in some sense, an ugly body and ugly mind. You can see somebody who has a beautiful mind but an ugly body, and you can see someone who has an ugly body but a beautiful mind. Right? It's like there's a sort of psychological display. That means it's not just about how we're being a physical entity, but it's about how our consciousness is being the presence of the whole moment that is holding all that we can be. The greatest divinity is in our own eyes, not the eyes of others. And when we realize this, the teachers of the outer realms become the teaching of the inner. They don't say this, right? But all those people who think they're gurus, I take the attitude of the kind of like a designer, explorer, and pilot archetype when I give these talks, right? But for those people who think they're enlightened gurus, it's as if like the whole purpose of the enlightened guru was to be a mirror and to reflect that how the other person saw divinity was within them. There was this story which is very profound, associated to a man named Papaji. And Papaji was this young yogi who was seeking enlightenment, and he goes to this mountain in India called Arunachala. This mountain was known for various yogis, just kind of like all people who wanted to get enlightened, they would go to this mountain. So it was a mountain filled with like yogis seeking the supreme reality. And so Papaji was one of these yogis. And so one day he sees the avatar of Krishna come to him, and he starts dancing with the archetype of a god in front of him. Right? And so as he's dancing, this supremely enlightened yogi by the name of Ramana Maharshi, which has one of the most incredible enlightenment stories. But that's something people can Google. Sri Ramana Maharshi sees this kid, Papaji, just dancing with nothing, like just dancing as if God's in front of him, but there's no God. Like he's just dancing alone. And so Ramana Maharshi is walking past Papaji and he says, "Hey, what are you doing, young yogi?" And so Papaji says, "I am dancing with God. God has come to me. The ultimate is manifested in front of me and I'm dancing with it." And this is where Ramana Maharshi tells Papaji this, he gives him this gem of wisdom that releases Papaji from his own mind. And so he says a God that comes and goes is not the real God. That means what is inconceivable in a changing world is changeless potential of it. It's as if divinity is the potential of the world in which free will is here to activate. There's this quote also I'll share it now. It's from a man called Rabindranath Tagore, this Indian polymath. He says, "Beauty is truth's smile when she beholds her own face in a perfect mirror." So we can say beauty is another way of saying completion. I think I'm writing this wrong. Completion of contentment with the ultimate, or another way I could have written it is that completion. Here, I should rewrite this. Completion through ultimate contentment. Beauty is another way of saying a value from our inner life is being reflected in our outer life. You can say there's a beauty for the personality, and then there's the beauty of presence. And it's another way of saying how much has the human psychology become content with stillness and silence. To me, those beings who have somehow become content with stillness and silence, they are the most able beings on the planet, because it's as if once we are content with the simple levels of life, we cannot fear its complexity, only appreciate the discovery. I will conclude this episode through this view. When divinity arrives, all dimensions are no longer incomplete. This is it. We think that something that's going on as life is, it's as if like we change the inefficiency by noticing the efficiency. I don't know how else to say. Like really, what else can I say to a species of a space-time continuum? It's like we either, you know, we either have our greatest, we either present our greatest performance, or we, you know, we silently dissolve out of conception. Those who can trust their world that's when the imagination activates. Those who trust themselves, their archetypes, their individual archetypal self also finds freedom. The idea is that nobody can technically judge their imagination in accordance to the past, because they are a new moment. It's technically we're 8 billion occupants in the space-time continuum. It's as if like time has leased, you know, this space for us. And to me, it's as if, you know, there's, let's say, the winters of the individual self, right? But to me, when I think about there's a species here, just the ability for it to be here, even this feeling sometimes that there will be new human beings born and new advanced communicators, pilots, and geniuses be born on this planet. It's as if like really the greatness of life is that we bask in how that greatness is happening. My strategy in trying to see how can we build an advanced civilization is by first bringing this question to all human beings on this planet. Are you advanced? And have you ever wondered about what your most advanced state of being and manifestation would look like? Right? It's another way of saying like we don't know who we are until we know who we are. The idea is that rather than having an emotional reaction to fear, which is the species to ideological possession, we stop fearing the world, and then nothing can possess us. Nothing can disturb how attention is being present purely. Right? This is the power that comes with a person realizing that as much as a complex life is possible, a simple life is possible, and the simplicity can be as equal as the complexity. That means somebody living a simple life, that could be considered an advanced state of being. And somebody living a very complex life, that could be considered an advanced state of being. And ultimately it comes down to the intent of this biological organism that we are. It's as if it's not just what the body wants, it's not just what the mind wants, but it's like, what does the greatness of the soul of mankind want? What does an inconceivably great being require? Right? To me, really, God is like the king archetype. And so it's like anytime a creature considers that the original source of the universe is a sort of inconceivable intelligence, it's like our bodies are serving the cosmos, and the minds are serving their origin. The behavior of human psychology is so fascinating that we don't have time to be violent as a species when the 4.5 billion years has given us such an advanced mind. Right? It's like a person can move worlds behind their eyes, but in front of their eyes they can move in one world, one apparent physical world. I don't know if you find a portal or Stargate, that's a different discussion. If somebody says Mr.Within, where would you, like to give a podcast? Like, what would be an interesting location you would like to give a podcast? I'd be like, it would be right in the middle of a portal. Do you know? Or it would be as if like live streaming from another dimension. You on the Mr.Within's Gift YouTube channel. Wonder about beauty because it is an ability. I'm gonna read a bunch of quotes on beauty and then end this off. People are gonna be like, Mr. Within, that's so beautiful. So guys, the quote tunnel is a part of these episodes where I just try to share how different human beings from the past have looked at life. Confucius says, everything has beauty, but not everyone sees it. Ralph Waldo Emerson says, never lose an opportunity of seeing anything beautiful, for beauty is God's handwriting. Audrey Hepburn, the beauty of a woman is not in a facial mode, but the true beauty in a woman is reflected in her soul. It is the caring that she lovingly gives, the passion that she shows. The beauty of a woman grows with the passing years. You see, guys, this is something incredible where I think women are evolutionarily designed to present their greatest self in case, if in the scheme of evolution, the children were watching. You know, it would be another way of saying, like, parents are tasked with appearing as the most advanced beings. But it is true, you know, when we realize there's a soul, there's an unknown soul behind the eyes of every conscious entity, then it's like it's a game changer. Imagine a solipsist freaking out over eating meat, being like, you know, have I been eating consciousness this whole time? We have to just honor anything that moves in a unique way on this planet can be considered as intelligence. Even the wind blowing a leaf, to me, that can be considered as intelligence. We just don't attribute it. To continue with the quote tunnel, Ashley Smith, life is full of beauty. Notice it. Notice the bumblebee, the small child, and the smiling faces. Smell the rain and feel the wind. Live your life to the fullest potential and fight for your dreams. Charles Lamb says, let us live for the beauty of our own reality. John Ray says, beauty is power, a smile is its sword. Jean Enui says, things are beautiful if you love them. Dante Alighieri says, beauty awakens the soul to act. Wow. Never knew Dante Alighieri had that much inner ability to see. You know, people don't know this, but Dante Alighieri is like the founder of the imagery of hell. Cultural founders. He pretty much in the Divine Comedy presents 7 levels of hell and 7 levels of heaven. But I think that's he might have plagiarized that from Vedic thought. You know, who knows? Hold on, guys, I have so many tabs open, I lost the page. Okay, there we go. Letitia Costa says real beauty is to be true to oneself. That's what makes me feel good. Anne Royf says a woman whose smile is open and whose expression is glad has a kind of beauty no matter what she wears. Socrates says beauty is a short-lived tyranny. St. Augustine says since love grows within you, so beauty grows, for love is the beauty of the soul. Anatole France says, if the path be beautiful, let us not ask where it leads. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe says, the soul that sees beauty may sometimes walk alone. H.G. Wells says, beauty is in the heart of the beholder. Anne Frank says, think of all the beauty still left around you and be happy. Groucho Marx says she got her looks from her father. He's a plastic surgeon. Groucho Marx in the middle of like his wisdom tunnel here. Conrad Hall says there is a kind of beauty in imperfection. Maria Mitchell says there's no cosmetic for beauty like happiness. Francis Bacon says the best part of beauty is that which no picture can express. Yep. Aristotle says personal beauty is a greater recommendation than any letter of reference. Khalil Gibran says beauty is eternity gazing at itself in a mirror. Edna St. Vincent Millay says beauty is whatever gives joy. Edmund Burke says beauty is the promise of happiness. David Hume says beauty in things exists in the mind which contemplates them. George Meredith says a witty woman is a treasure, a witty beauty is a power. Jacqueline Bisset says character contributes to beauty. It fortifies a woman as her youth fades, a mode of conduct, a standard of courage, discipline, fortitude, and integrity can do a great deal to make a woman beautiful. Hosi Balu says, it is easy to be beautiful, it is difficult to appear so. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, people are like stained glass windows. They sparkle and shine when the sun is out, but when the darkness sets in, their true beauty is revealed only if there is a light from within. Wow. Victor Hugo says to love beauty is to see light. You know, that's another argument that can be made about beauty. It's like, is beauty light? That means when we think something is beautiful, are we thinking light is beautiful? Juvenal says, rare is the union of beauty and purity. Voltaire says it is not sufficient to see and to know the beauty of a work. We must feel and be affected by it. Havelock Ellis says the absence of flaw in beauty is itself a flaw. Carl Wilhelm Friedrich Schlegel says beauty is that which is simultaneously attractive and sublime. Edgar Allan Poe says beauty of whatever kind in its supreme development invariably excites the sensitive soul to tears. Ovid says beauty is a fragile gift. Albert Camus, beauty is unbearable, drives us to despair, offering us for a minute the glimpse of an eternity that we should like to stretch out over the whole of time. Wow. I can totally see that. You know. Because it's like, you know, we are drawn, because we're temporary creatures, we have this subconscious eternal desire, let's say, to see the other side of what we are. And when something allows that in the outer realms, I think that's when the idea of beauty is there. To honor the souls that move the moment, the soul of the moment. Emily Dickinson says beauty is not caused, it is. Leo Tolstoy says it is amazing how complete is the delusion that beauty is goodness. Maya Angelou says it is time for parents to teach young people early on that in diversity there is beauty and there is strength. Lorraine Carlos. Exactly, our diversity is a tactical advantage of the species to use all the different dimensions to build a greater one. There was a time where I thought, could civilization be the archaic revival of the Tower of Babylon story? You know, could it be that incomplete creatures see completion and when they're about to reach it, there is no completion, right? And then I realized no, because whether man, if like in some sense it's as if the potential of the creature can be simultaneously seen as the divinity of the moment, you know. In other words, it's another way of saying, could an advanced civilization be the divine right of the conscious? It's a divine right to be capable to recognize that inner worlds can in some sense be orchestrated in a way where the advanced civilization is the greatest symphony of all of our minds. You know, it's not just that our physical body played a part in existing in the realm, it was that our minds advanced further than the past could hold us from. What is beauty? The ability to appreciate the whole moment. I find this is the greatest beauty. It's another way of saying the person that is peaceful doesn't have the concept of peace. The person that is liberated doesn't have the concept of liberation. Why? Because they're already being it. An advanced being will not have the concept of advancement. Why? Because it's already being advanced. The potential is alive as much as the void grants us visualization. And so it's as if a species has to assemble towards an advanced humanity. We owe this not to just the past, the future, the past that got us here, the present that keeps us here, but we owe it to the future which we are living through. That means the purpose of life is to, the purpose of conscious life is to live for the future. The purpose of realizing it's an unknown event, then it's as if there's I shouldn't say two exits, but there's two ways a person can access a collective state, either by being everything in the moment or being nothing in the moment, and both of them will suddenly, it's another way of saying like duality is sandwiched between infinity and oneness. And though both of those states go beyond the dualistic archetype. That means an immortal being, like let's say there was a human being that was an immortal person, right? And imagine, there's temporary beings. That immortal being's psychology would be as alien to us if an extraterrestrial landed down and would be like, wow, look at that data set of mysteries, and look at this data set of mysteries, A few more quotes and I'll end this off. Rosalind Russell says, taking joy in living is a woman's best cosmetic. William Butler Yeats says, I heard the old men say, all that's beautiful drifts away like the waters. Priscilla Presley says, inner beauty should be the most important part of improving oneself. And let me tell you, inner beauty is possible when there's an inner beautiful world. It's as if like there's some people who start from a context of freedom, and so there's some people, some conceptual positions that don't, and then they seek it. It's as if like first literally it's like a person has to measure their own ability to some degree to see what their conscious waking state is allowing them to work with. Right? It's like on some level, sure, we're functioning with the subjective notion that we're ideas talking to each other, but on another level, we are moments of existence with a mysterious experiential glow. Right? To me, it's as if the soul is a question mark and the mind is an exclamation point. James Can says, some guys say beauty is only skin deep, but when you walk into a party, you don't see somebody's brain. The initial contact has to be the sniffing. James Can seem to party a lot, guys. There seems to be historical evidence of this. Alicia Mercado says beauty is only temporary, but your mind lasts you a lifetime. Thomas Leonard says integrity reveals beauty. And I think I've read every quote here. There's one more. Lawrence J. Peter. Every girl should use what Mother Nature gave her before Father Time takes it away. It's like, Freud would probably comment on that. And let's see what else. One last quote. Okay, I'll read a few more. Homer says, in youth and beauty, wisdom is but rare. Nikolai Gogol says, always think of what is useful and not what is beautiful. Beauty will come of its own accord. Malcolm de Chazal says, the beautiful remains so in ugly surroundings. Tadao Ando says, there's a role and function for beauty in our time. Mary von Ebner Eschenbach says, what delights us in visible beauty is the invisible. David Barnes says, real beauty knocks you a little bit. What is this? Real beauty knocks you a little bit off kilter. No idea what that is. Benjamin Franklin says, beauty and folly are old companions. Walter Scott says, faces that have charmed us the most escape us the soonest. Gothold Ephraim Lessing says, for me the greatest beauty always lies in the greatest clarity. It's a good statement. Sarah Teasdale says, beauty more than bitterness makes the heart break. This Greek dude named Plautus says, I would rather be adorned by beauty of character than jewels. Jewels are the gift of fortune, while character comes from within. Ambrose Bierce says, beauty, the power by which a woman charms a lover and terrifies a husband. Ralph Waldo Emerson, love of beauty is taste, the creation of beauty is art. Jennifer Aniston says, when I feel inwardly beautiful when I am with my girlfriends and we're having a goddess circle. You see, the ability of beauty in all dimensions lifts up the mind, right? That means there's something about the beautiful that it's like strangely an impurity can't touch it, right? Like I think that there's something to that. I'm not talking about outer beauty. I'm just talking about like just the realization of how the moment's being here. There's a supreme feeling that comes with that. Kirsten Dunst says, I'd like to grow up and be beautiful. I know it doesn't matter, but it doesn't hurt. Amanda Pete says, beauty is only skin deep. If you go after someone just because she's beautiful but don't have anything to talk about, it's going to get boring fast. You want to look beyond the surface and see if you can have fun or if you have anything in common with this person. Victor Hugo says, virtue has a veil, vice a mask. Loretta Young says, there's no personal achievement in being born beautiful. Annie Dillard says, as soon as beauty is sought not from religion and love but for pleasure, it degrades the seeker. Charles Baudelaire says, even in the centuries which appear to us to be the most monstrous and foolish, the immortal appetite for beauty has always found satisfaction. Brian Proctor says, O human beauty, what a dream art thou, that we should cast our life and hopes away on thee. Alexis Carroll says, the love of beauty in its multiple forms is the noblest gift of the human cerebrum. It's kind of like beauty is like, you know, some next level thing that the brain's doing simultaneously. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe says beauty is a manifestation of secret natural laws which otherwise would have been hidden from us forever. Ralph Waldo Emerson says flowers are a proud assertion that a ray of beauty outvalues all the utilities of the world. Albert Einstein says the pursuit of truth and beauty is a sphere of activity in which we're permitted to remain children all our lives. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying the person should ignore the outer realms and just be trapped in an inner realm beautiful world. It's just the idea that the brain has an ability to acknowledge beauty. The fact that it can acknowledge beauty, suddenly it's like not only like an object can be beautiful, but an equation can be beautiful. You know, there was a scientist called Paul Dirac, and I think this was in his documentary I saw of him, where he said something in the lines of, if there is an equation, kind of Lord of the Rings style, to like be the ultimate equation for everything, it's like it has to be beautiful. If the world can be put into an equation, it needs to be a beautiful equation. Audrey Hepburn says the beauty of a woman must be seen from in her eyes, because that is the doorway to her heart, the palace where love resides. Edward Wood, 1st Earl of Halifax, says the plainer the dress, the greater luster does beauty appear. Catherine Ann Porter says the real sin against life is to abuse and destroy beauty, even one's own, even more. One's own, for that has been put in our care and we're responsible for its well-being. Cindy Margolis says having inner beauty is something you develop on your own, and I like to think I have that. Trust, I think, to me, like an advanced being would instantaneously trust its being. I feel it's like without that trust of one's origin, it's like the beauty may feel like it's not permitted, but it is. Like it's there. Beauty is there, we notice it. And So I'll end this quote tunnel, guys. When the human species has an ability to acknowledge the unknown, that's poetically when I would say that's when divinity arrives, because we can acknowledge it. We are not afraid of the multidimensional, we understand it, rather than just standing under a giant question mark. You know, the task of the mind is to retaliate to the mysteries of the realm. You know, it's as if, like, imagine there was a sort of, let's say, emperor complex to, like, this person, and this emperor complex was making this person be like, I'm an emperor, I am the king of my own world. And so the person had such an ego of being like a king of their own world, that in some sense anything that became part of their own world that wasn't in their own world, they sought the same level of greatness to. It's as if, like, I don't know how to say it, it's like the greatest thing to invent is not per se an object, but it's a conscious collective movement. It's how human beings, you know, arm themselves with great visions as they march into how the future unravels. And so beauty is one of the greatest strategies of keeping ourselves human, because as long as we see the beauty in nature, we will not forget it. As long as some part of the human soul can realize, you know, poetically its original state, it's as if when the beauty of the original earth is there, no simulation can mask the eyes of eternal. No simulation can mask eternal eyes. Because the question, or I would say what he's looking at through my eyes right now, even as I'm giving this talk, it's as if I tried attributing it to an object, I notice it's happening as more than an object. I tried attributing subjects, I notice the subjects come and go, so it's more than a subject. I tried to consider the inconceivable, and I realized that's when duality becomes unnecessary. And so it's like, you know, there are greater states of mind which take the person into a dehumanized energetic being. So you literally shift from a psychological entity into an energetic being, right? But I would say that's unnecessary. That deep level of samadhi is unnecessary now. It's pretty much the task of divinity is to acknowledge that it's where how would I say it? It's like, in order to find truth in front of our eyes, its potential must exist behind our eyes. In order to achieve a sort of greatness for the realm, that means 8 billion advanced communicators building an advanced civilization just to see what it looks like. Like, that's the greatest inspiration. It's like, what would the beauty of an incredibly advanced system look like? You know, an advanced civilization to me is where the beauty of the human mind led, you know, where it found itself, you know, its greatest vision. The greatest vision of the species is an advanced civilization, and if I didn't exist, there would be more people in history who would eventually awaken to this notion. So there's a freedom here, and our minds are an unknown access, you know, or they are an access point to the unknown. The journey of our eyes, or the origin of sight, could it be something that its beauty is not dependent on content? That means a sort of, when the shapeless becomes beautiful, then it's like in everything, every shape there's a beautiful dimension present. It's like when space is beautiful, so is everything in it, when your space of your mind. And to me, it's like honesty and seeing how the original nature acts is way more fascinating than, let's say, archetypal identity gameplay. You see, it's like on some level every human being knows that we were born from the unknown. Life is a kind of known theater, and then beyond that, the known simulation, kind of like Matrix movie or something, and then we suddenly reach the unknown. So technically we are unknown journeyers, which in a known visible world-like way are journeying to an unknown destination. So when in the visible known world we wonder about the unknown, that's when divinity becomes how our own eyes know, you know. Anyways, guys. Thanks for listening, guys. Much blessings and namaste.